Hey, it's Lack of Lepers. We're back. Welcome, welcome. This is the third installment, and we're going to dip, dodge, duck, defenestrate, and dive right into where we left off, and that is the SCP Creative People, Simply Creative SCPers, Episode 3, the GOC. I got a little bit of help this time. Last time was very, very difficult to do. So let's get this going.
Are useful for displaying why the two organizations need to exist in the first place, because it's a weird thing.
Isn't that funny? It's like a Joker and Batman thing. I need you, and you need me. You do.
There, we'll
Here's why you need me is because Kalinin is no longer around.
Maybe stop the loss of human
You have an
Foundation
empty
is not
job
really as
position
interested
that has
in
yet to be
its
filled
report.
for critique.
It's a fun
Critiquer extraordinaire.
dichotomy, but it's also
You
like,
haven't filled that
there's
slot,
that
SCP.
gray
You
area
haven't
of the
filled that
Foundation
job
where the Foundation
because you don't want
is
to.
interested
Because you
in
don't like being
stopping the
critiqued.
chaos
You want pillows,
because those
soft
things
pillows. You
threaten
don't
the
want weights.
but not for the reasons
Just
that
the way it
GOC is interested, which is to save lives.
Yes, the GOC
a good day
is
to save
operating under
lives.
the United Nations Universal Declaration of Human Rights, and the Foundation is like, dead people aren't a problem. It's only a problem if live people hear about it.
Right.
I am
I thought
surrounded by
one of the coolest things that
laptop
Rounder
machines.
did in this is there are not these notations are not only
He got louder.
footnotes, which are
Oh yeah, this is a Rounder House article they're talking about, and I just wrote a. Let's do it like this. I just wrote a new Confic Wiki article on the lol Foundation. I mentioned it last time. By the way, what do you think? Robe, whatever. Lol Foundation, and the reason I wrote, well, actually Harmony wrote the lol Foundation part. The reason I put that together is so I could write the Neo lol Foundation part, which perfectly encapsulates this trend of writing that we see on the SCP Wiki in the last few years, really spearheaded by people like DJ Cactus to a lesser extent. He's sort of like the godfather in the backdrop of things that started it. And then we have people like Rounder House and Jay Dune and Jack Dragon X and Harry Blank, this guy, the Harry Stank guy, and a couple others. But basically, this is something that you can tell people are noticing. There's a comment on one article that's a total Neo-Lol Foundation article, by the way. No doubt about it. And there is an individual on there who's commenting, and he's like, I don't understand what's going on the SCP Wiki. I don't know what is happening. Everybody thinks this is okay, and it's not. Well, I hate to tell you this, but the Wiki is suffering from Neo-Lol Foundation. It's in the midst of an infection, and the only prescription is calling it out for what it is, and what it is Law Foundation. Just again in 2022, working on the angle here. Let's try that.
as well. There are also these little portions of the text that are highlighted.
Go check out that article on the Confic Wiki.
If you
Lol
on mobile, if you
Foundation.
click
Scroll
it,
to the
or
bottom.
on
Neo
PC,
Lol
if you
Foundation.
hover your mouse over it, it'll pop up these sort of secondary thoughts from the GOC's analysis teams, like you said,
Laptops
like,
everywhere.
Well, this doesn't actually make sense what they're telling us, or here's why.
Oh,
it
yes,
doesn't make
please.
sense. Or here's why this isn't a
please.
thing. Like
From
and it's
Indonesia,
just-
you can tell
what's fun
because
is that
they have
it
these
doesn't
gross
tell you
images on the
outright
front.
That this is
That doesn't happen in
about
America. These are from
a group of people
overseas.
trying to figure out a mystery.
Because these in
But it's-
America are fake.
you have to pay attention.
This is the
to
real
the
shit.
text to realize
It takes about
that
6 or
it is
9 months to
somebody
get
in
these
another organization
shipped in
trying
by
to,
boat.
dissect
Longer now, I'm sure.
Essentially, what is propaganda?
Yeah, it's great. It's like the parent has walked into the room, the lamp is on the floor, the lamp is broken, and the parent is like, Give me your explanation for how this lamp ended up broken.
Right.
And the kid's given their little statement, and the parent's looking at the statement going, how stupid do you think I am?
So, why would you need to explain that aspect of it? Also, where did you get this information? I mean, so the whole article is full of first-hand accounts, which makes sense because there are survivors of this event. But It also doesn't make sense because it's unclear
like
who the accounts are from sometimes. You
Yes,
can kind of
yes.
put together some context clues as to who's speaking, but it's like a whole village, so it's not like it's only 3 people involved.
Oh, there you go,
And
with that nice shore.
You start to wonder, like, wait, if they're describing this thing that happened, shouldn't they be dead? Like, like they talk about these events like continuing to push forward until like reality is falling apart around it in some very descriptive ways. And it's like not even disturbing. It's just kind of like, wow, that's weird. What's happening? And if someone was there as a first-hand account witness of some of those events, they probably would not be around giving a statement.
Okay. My favorite bit about it is a bit of it's simultaneously clever writing and also fourth wall breaking, because at one point the description of the effects is so detailed and scientific that the footnoter goes, how the fuck did they get that information from anybody? Like, do they just know how these devices
what you gotta
work,
do.
and that's how they're able to intuit? And it's simultaneously
Play with the
fourth wall breaking thing of,
epistemology.
why is it that sometimes the logs in interviews seem to have information that really the author is sticking in there because the audience needs it?
See,
but there's no
Rounderhouse
way the
knows what he's
Foundation
doing
knows it.
here.
And it's also, why is it that the Foundation seems so very capable of describing this event? Why do they seem to know exactly what's going on?
Right. Why is the narrator like this well informed?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Why,
And I mean, I
why
love
is it an
that-
omniscient narrator in such a weird reality bent?
Right. So the whole
And I
wiki
mean,
is
especially
based off
given-
of a lack of an omniscient narrator. That's really one of the defining things about the genre, as opposed to, the more classical modes available of storytelling. You don't have that omniscient narrator available in containment fiction. You got just what you got in front of you as a scientist, and to do that, you have to put yourself in the mindset of the scientist. There is an innate, de facto, a priori amount of immersion that has to happen for you to be able to write in the containment fiction genre. That is what these people are talking about. This is what Rounderhouse is playing with, skillfully, okay? But anybody, I think these things are being lost. People don't really care that, you shouldn't have an omniscient narrator. You shouldn't. They don't care because it's not. It's like DJ Cactus said in his creative stuff podcast interview, where if I can tell a good story, fuck the format. If I feel like I can tell the story better, just escaping the boundaries and the definitions is another way of looking at that, of the genre, then fuck the genre is what he said in so many words. And so that's okay. Like, I'm all for fucking with the rules, obviously, but you do get to a point where you flip over the rails, okay, and then you start to fall. And so I think that's what's going to happen. And I think that's kind of what's happening here. People aren't appreciating the limitations of the epistemology that should be baked into the format.
And the fact that we're supposed to believe these are grounded, like, scientific / almost government reports, in universe.
Right.
But that note specifically was so funny because one of the
drink,
lines of that note
smoke,
is them saying,
a
well,
cuss.
either the Foundation
Not
has
the man you
way
want to bring
more
home.
advanced technology than we have, that we just weren't aware that they had, or maybe they're a lot more familiar with this type of reality warping than they have
I
let
recording?
us
Yes, I am.
know beforehand.
Thank God.
And like that's like your first wait a minute.
Yes.
What's going on here?
Yeah.
The fun thing about the Foundation and the GOC in this mode is they're kind of like, there's an iron curtain between them. They're the
Right,
west
yeah.
and the east.
Yeah.
And they're both like, here's what I think the other guy can do, but I don't know.
Yeah, because they don't, right? I mean, it's not like the GOC is being invited over for tea.
Nope.
But anyway, I highly recommend it. First of all, almost everything
Great
Rounderhouse, almost everything Rounderhouse is written.
go.
I enjoy.
That's what I need to
It's
do right
always
there.
a solid recommendation to say go read.
Always,
stuff.
because
But
Rounderhouse
this
is
one
the most.
especially good for the GOC,
He's
I
he's the most.
Yeah, it's a fun article too because it's a
like half of his articles, I think, probably 2/3 of his articles are Neo Lol Foundation.
Right.
Just look at the SCP Wiki article. Sorry, look at the Containment Fiction Wiki article.
Have a good reason for doing them. are a good reason to break the format once you've gotten used to how to write the format in the first place, which obviously
Yeah, you
Renner
can
has
break
done,
the format,
being
but
one
if you
of the
keep breaking the
top
format,
25 authors on the wiki.
Right. Yeah. But there's some other articles.
it's like, remember when your
talk
mom
about,
told you don't make that face because it's going to stick that way? Yeah.
one of which is actually 3 articles, but they're very short, called Case Cold Harbor.
I don't believe it.
And it's on the GOC hub, or at least the links to it are, where it is like a 3-part tale series focusing on one anomaly that the GOC is trying to handle. Well, also the Foundation is trying to handle.
I missed the table.
Never really goes into what the anomaly is, because that's not really the point. And this is like a perfect example of what we were talking about earlier.
Right.
That the point of the tale series is to kind of illustrate how real world, like geopolitical organizations would handle like end of the world scenarios.
Well, it's also an example of what y'all were talking about earlier, in that, the anomaly is really, it's really the plate, right? It's really this blank canvas for you to paint your narrative onto. It's really just the ladder that you climb up and then you kick away whenever you've gotten up to the point of narrative. Retracing of clad, trite, narrative pathways of composition, literarily. So, yeah, that's what you guys want. I mean, why don't all the articles just have why do you even have a description? Let's just jump to the addenda. I mean, we've already deprioritized the containment procedures, right? I mean, those are a chore, right? I mean, who enjoys those? Is anybody still write who knows how to work those? Can anybody work it?
Yes,
Just take a novel that you wrote, put it on the site, and just put the SCP letters on top.
very, very cool one.
Yeah, it's written by Spike Brennan.
That's where we are.
Wrote one of my favorite, although not everyone's favorite, 001, God's Blind Spot. And, he wrote this from 3 different perspectives in 3 different time periods. And
Cool.
It's just like these tiny little windows into what was probably a larger file that we never get to see.
Good writer.
But the first one is about, the Allied, I don't think it's the Foundation. I think it's like the OSS or something like that. During World War II, like analyzing
World
some
War
Nazi
II,
documents
Nazis.
that talk about
Here he is.
a
Nazi.
expedition to the Antarctic.
Anybody I
that
disagree
found
with is a
something
Nazi.
that they refer to as her, and is clearly something that is
Don't
so
misgender
horrible
her.
that
Did
they
you just
can't even
assume her
figure out how to
gender?
kill it, and they brought it back.
Oh, it's in
to
the tail.
somewhere in Europe so that they could, weaponize it. But they failed so completely with that they're just trying to think of how to contain it. And we don't really get to see much about it at that point. But all we do know is that even these like weird black magic Nazi types are like, oh shit,
Yes, Nazis.
we can't
Nazis.
control this thing.
I thought you weren't allowed to write about
It's
Nazis
got a
in the
great
SCP Wiki
deal
anymore.
of verisimilitude in it because it's got historical
There's a
domain
$10 word,
characters.
verisimilitude.
Nixon and Carter and such. And
Oh, yeah.
Kissinger
Good job.
and Haig and
The guy's got a
because,
thesaurus on
the
him. I'll
next
tell
part
him.
of the
I'll give him
tale
that.
takes place in like a briefing room in the White House in like 1972, under the Nixon presidency, where Nixon is
Wish I
basically
could smoke this in
ordering
here. I can't.
that if this alarm
A
goes
youngin'
off,
treads through
and if,
here.
I don't remember if it was actually Case Cold Harper. It was some code word goes
yeah,
off.
it's Cold Harper.
Okay, then everything that we
watched,
have, except for the subs that carries a nuclear weapon, needs to
the
be pointed at
finale
this
of
island.
the Book of Boba Fett tonight.
Because if we don't do that,
Good.
then we're all going to die, and probably we will anyway.
Good
And
stuff.
You start to realize through this conversation that whatever it is,
Can I turn him down a little
which
bit?
is on an island off the coast of Russia, which was a nuclear test site under Khrushchev, that it wasn't
Why isn't
a
it turning
test
him
site,
down?
that was them trying to contain whatever this thing was, which is implied to be the same entity that the Nazis.
There we go. Turn him down just a
took out.
bit.
Yes, they dropped the Tsar bomb.
Yes, turn down. Yeah, so that's the thing about. So I
And
like
all
Star
they
Wars,
and
but the new Star
either
Wars,
Foundation or the
they kind of
GOC
suck.
well, actually, no, it's the GOC
The
and
Book of Boba Fett is the
are
first thing
the
I've
ones that
watched
man
since
the
like Rogue
facility
One
that
of
are
Star Wars
keeping
material
contained
that I thought was
because they
pretty
can't
damn good.
control it. And
And
literally,
this is
the
this is
height
the
of
way
the
I
Cold
roll.
War,
Is that I
US
have a
military
high threshold
Nixon
for
is saying,
being pleased,
every
you
nuclear
know.
arsenal,
And so
every
this
big
actually
nuclear
really did
arsenal
it.
we
I
have
really
except for
enjoyed
the
this,
ones
and I was very
themselves,
happy to watch it.
to fire
And it
on
makes
them
all the other
because it
times
was-
of
we
being
won't even
honest
have
about
time
how
to run a
shitty
test run. Nope,
the
we're
other
just
Star
gonna
Wars
fire
installments
everything.
are
Bomb
worth
runs,
it because,
everything on this
you know,
one
you
island.
finally get something that's
Somebody
good.
at some
And
point says something
the
like,
same is
well,
true of the
we're gonna
SCP
have
Wiki. I think
nothing
most
but
of it is
like the
garbage.
Russians, and the answer
Every
is,
once in a while you
if
get
we
something
have
real
to
nice, and it's
lose,
just
there
totally
are no
worth it just to
Russians at
wait,
this point.
just to hold out for that
Because
really
they're
good
the
thing,
first ones who are gonna attack
and
this thing, and they're gonna
and
be
not
dead
not
already.
settle for
That's right.
just garbage.
Yeah, and I mean the best part is I think is that Spike
People who
Ray
are riding
never
along with the
actually
name of
explains the
SCP
anomaly. So
itself
you
on the
are just left
coattails.
to fill in the blanks as to
I
what
think we're at
this
the point
thing
now where
is
most
by the
SCPs
reaction
posted
of
wouldn't
these
survive
people that
elsewhere,
handle,
like
you know, that
RPC.
talk about the deaths
Even
of thousands on a daily basis, right? This is the president of the United States at cruise
we
ship.
got more
And
completely
they're
mediocre articles coming from the SCP,
And the
than
sort of
ever.
POV character that comes across all of the tales here,
just like
is
static.
a GOC operative who's always there at the meeting, and not everybody at the meeting even knows who this guy is.
Right.
He's the one he's the GOC fixer whose job is to know about this thing that we might
Help
need
me.
to nuke. And so they play the sort of shadow organizer of the conspiracy. That role usually goes to the Foundation, but of course it makes more sense for it to be the GOC because they have that legitimacy.
Right.
They're talking to the president because the president's allowed to know they exist.
Right. And what's fun is there's like one part where the like chief of staff, the White House chief of staff, I don't remember if this is the Nixon part or the part in '91, which was the George Bush senior part.
I think it's in the Bush senior one.
Okay.
I know what you're gonna say.
And the
He's a
chief
Nazi,
of
I'm
staff
sure.
is like, I don't know what you guys are talking about. And George Bush is like, what do you mean?
What do you
I
mean?
took you there like 2 months ago when we visited Russia.
Oh
we went
yeah,
out to that
you're a
island."
Nazi.
You know, and I'm paraphrasing. And the guy's like, I have no idea. And he's like, what? Did you guys really have to like give him the little yellow pill, which implying MST?
Well, yeah, he's a Nazi.
And the GOC
Right.
agent like pops up and goes, well, actually, that was us. And the president's like, well, why? Like, we're trying to have a meeting here. And he's like, well, actually, he asked for it after he saw it.
It was so awful. He wanted his memory wiped.
And again, they don't go into details. They just go, hey, this guy.
Why doesn't the Foundation
who is,
just
like,
amnesticize all
knows
Nazis?
he's the White House chief of staff. He probably knows as much as the president.
Surprised that isn't
Most,
actually an article
a-
yet.
as to all the secrets of the U.S. government. And he was like, oh, you know, can you just erase my memory? Because I don't want to think about this shit ever.
God, this is hard to get through.
Yeah, that's part of the beauty of these three tales is it never ever describes really what this thing is.
Yep,
Ex-
and that's
except-
actually
except
it's
by
funny.
the effect it has on people.
That is more like classical containment fiction than what we get these days. What you get these days is just a total description, you know, just a lore, because people are interested in building lore these days, not leaving things to the imagination. You see, so you have this new sort of basically normative process of filling in as many details as you possibly can, and you know that's why you have something like SCP-6500 or you know DJ Cactus's you know The Way It Ends or the Aurora Boreas. You basically have people who you know they're explicitly doing the opposite. They're not. The old way was to show and not tell. The new way is to tell and not show. So
Make them want to forget, and also make them want to be able to nuke it if they have to.
So, I do highly recommend that Spike Brennan project because it does kind of give some really interesting insight into the geopolitical aspect of it.
Yeah.
But I wanted to move on because we've got a bunch of them.
We do.
SCP-4851, which is another one that's from the perspective of the Foundation, and is almost entirely, as opposed to Rounderhouse's article, this one, which was by Tupac Official.
I'll say that this article
was
they were
by
talking
Tupac,
about of
which is amazing.
Randerhouse
I'm
is
not sure
He
how the
came back from-
timeline
is
not sure how
He
the
came back
timeline
from the
works.
dead.
not a
So,
LOL
I mean,
Foundation article. It's not
definitely
Neo
not.
LOL Foundation. So good on him.
But this one
When he
is,
doesn't
you know,
do
real
Neo LOL
briefly,
Foundation,
is
Rounderhouse is
about
really good.
this
It's just that, you know,
2040
three-quarters of
it's
his
discovered
stuff
that
is
there's, like,
Neo LOL
108
Foundation,
species, 108 species of flora,
which is
and
which
fauna
is
that are
just
highly
a
resistant
cloak
to, like, these
for
tremendous amounts of
a
toxins that
brand
are,
of
if
writing
you
that
look into it, a lot
prioritizes
of
and
things
hopes
that are
for
happening because of
upvotes
pollution
more
and
than
global
anything
warming.
else.
And they have increased fertility, increased evolution in response to environmental changes, and they have like outright open hostility towards humans and man-made structures. 10 years after they're discovered, animals are observed encroaching on civilian population centers, and the loss of life is so dramatic that
So this is basically an old
150,000 people
SCP
are
Series
estimated to
1
have
style
been killed.
article, right? Where spooky monster animal kills
So
people,
the
right?
GOC gathers together the UN and the GOC to address it, and that's what is the Moscow Agreement. And basically, the Moscow Agreement is to strengthen the global response to the threat of this anomaly in the context of sustainable economic development and minimalization of human suffering by pledging each party's economic and military assistance to exterminate all these animals, global surveillance channels.
It's a Godzilla movie?
Click identification of
Basically.
them, where these animals would be showing up, and authorizing global nuclear proliferation in
just like
preparation for
Godzilla.
deployment in areas where these
Didn't they nuke
anomalous
Godzilla?
animals
I don't know what I'm talking about.
You know,
I have no
proportionate.
fucking clue what I'm talking about. I've never watched Godzilla.
This is
Other
a
than,
group of
with Matthew
animals that
Broderick.
is so hostile to people that they're killing hundreds of
That's the
thousands
dragon.
of
That's
them.
all the dragon you
And
need
so
right
the
there.
U.S. Well, the world
Damn.
governments have decided that they could possibly blow up the entire planet to kill a bunch of birds, essentially. Which is just so funny. I mean, the whole thing is clearly like a metaphor for global warming.
It is, but
response
doesn't it
to
get kind of
global warming,
stupid
but-
when you blow up the whole planet for birds? Did I hear that right? You're gonna blow up the whole planet to kill these? I mean, what's the point? So I mean, I get that it's a metaphor for global warming. It's like a sermon essentially, but doesn't the metaphor break down when? Because by that point you're strawmanning the people. Once again, you're strawmanning the people you're trying to argue against. You're trying to set these people up who are destroying the earth and saying, oh, we're going to nuke the whole earth to kill these species. Look, we're just like global warming people. But, if it doesn't make any sense to destroy, if you don't give a good actual reason or motive to destroy the planet, I just don't think that works very well. Nobody is. I can't say this because the author is just going to disagree. I was going to say that no one is, trying to blow the planet up by killing something. But I'm sure there's like a poetic statement in reply that says, "You're killing the." You're killing the global average temperature, whatever.
Organizations and international law has taken, which is, to say the least, not very effective.
Global warming, whether it's true or not, is
plays
installing
to
a system as a social credit
trope
system
of the
for
GOC
companies
thinking
and
that
shit.
the best thing
So
is to destroy everything. Because they
ESG.
get all the nations of the UN together and say, okay, listen, everybody has to pledge that we're going to kill all these animals, and if that we can't do it in conventional ways, then we're going to use nuclear weapons.
Yep.
It's just ridiculous. And I mean,
Yeah, it
especially
is
because
ridiculous.
at first
It's almost like
seems
it's just
oh,
bad
we found
writing.
these
It's just
weird
dumb.
animals. Oh,
I mean,
they're
who
hostile
would
to
think
people,
that? Who would
which,
decide that?
there have
I
been,
guess my
like,
point is that what I was trying to say earlier, very poorly, just a second ago, is that you have to make it just so hyperbolically stupid to get to the point that you're making the metaphor with global warming.
100
that it
different
doesn't
articles
work.
that take
It's
that
just-
those
it's just
same
too stupid
similar
by then.
steps.
Yes.
And then
You
the
need a
article
better
completely
metaphor.
stops worrying about the animals and then just it's fairly short, spends the rest of the article talking about how the world government gets together under the GOC to decide to exterminate all life.
Yep. It's very matter of fact, and it just sort of ends.
I don't see that's very interesting, though.
It ends
You basically
with
have
this
a
agreement, which is
monster
just
kill
like,
you. It's the same thing these people were trying to decry earlier. You have a monster that's going to kill everybody. Spooky monster. I thought that wasn't supposed to do very well. So it apparently does well because it involves the GOC and it has some social commentary meta style on global warming. I don't get it.
Oh, okay, so like our response to global warming is
Maybe it's really well
to
written.
blow up the planet. Okay, well that seems pretty appropriate.
Yeah. I don't see the problem.
Yeah, no, definitely.
I know
no
you
problem.
don't.